Welcome back, Jeff. You have an interesting background to say the least. Literally flying in and through the aviation and benefits industries. Family businesses, working with families. Currently, you're involved in a pretty exciting, innovative benefits business, which I'm excited about. Also, an investment company, as you said, a nonprofit education foundation. I saw. Who knows what you do in your spare time? But can you share with us how this has and how you've evolved in your career? And are you at the point where this is what I always wanted to be when I grow up?
Um, well, I don't know if it's everything I've always wanted to do when I grew up, because I'm not really sure that I've yet grown up, and I like to think that every morning I get up and there's more growth in front of me. But Mark, I can't tell you that I am where I am by design, as much as I'm certainly pursuing passions, which I think is a really important part of where my energy comes from. So I don't feel like I'm out of time, only because it just feels good and it feels right to be where I am. And I would say that what's happened for me is really a series of arriving at pivotal moments and recognizing that I'm at a pivotal moment, and then having the ability to take action and pivot and take advantage of an opportunity. So, I rode my bike out to the airport as a kid because I thought I wanted to fly airplanes, and I'm still very passionate and still do fly airplanes, but that became my first career. So everything I did was driven towards creating the capability to fly airplanes. But what I discovered about myself was that there was really more that I really needed, which was to really connect with people and to create opportunities for others, and that I would see opportunities for others and want to connect them with those opportunities. And when you're sitting up front behind a closed door, that doesn't happen. So I transitioned out of the cockpit and went into a family business, which was a real estate business. I flew for a real estate company, so I learned a lot about the real estate business flying for a real estate company as a corporate pilot.
Mm-hmm.
But not soon thereafter, I found myself consulting and advising for a Fortune 100 aerospace company. And then it was in the roaring mid-'80s when junk debt was being used as currency to help acquire companies. And I found myself square in the intersection of a leveraged buyout of the company that I was advising, helping the senior executives with financial planning and estate planning and insurance planning and that sort of thing. And with one of the members of management, we acquired a group of companies that were being spun off. So, and I was approached to help organize that transaction because there was a perception that I had the ability to do that. So, I couldn't tell you that I had planned on taking on a corporate responsibility for risk management and human capital. I'd never seen a union collective bargaining agreement before, especially with a union that was threatening to go on strike as we walked into this acquisition. So it was really just a series of circumstances and steps that evolved. And sometimes I found myself in circumstances and situations where I had to think very quickly and very deeply about how am I going to figure this one out. Always guided by a very strong moral and ethical compass. Definitely was helpful in making decisions, but also guided by a desire to help others. So, and then there's unintended consequences that come from having success in those kinds of activities. So today I've assembled a team to acquire a public company in the aerospace, defense, electronics, logistics business, and one of our board members is a director. Was my mentor. He was helped bring me into business. He was actually a business leader at this aerospace company at the time, and it's 40 years later. So, and the irony of the story is when the first deal went down in the mid-'80s, I was in Mexico on vacation with my wife, and he was interrupting me. And this past week, I found him in Mexico to interrupt him 40 years later to help us close this deal. So, but the ability to bring a team together and have credibility in the marketplace is built on and layered on years and years of experience. But having run human capital for this aerospace company is what piqued my curiosity, and I think curiosity is an important sort of attribute for anybody who is interested in leadership and in growth. But I've always been highly curious, and my curiosity was piqued when I noticed that in the mid 80s and early 90s, we had a workforce that was less than, I would say, optimally productive. And nobody really understood how to address that lack of productivity. Nobody really understood how to quantify the economics associated with a loss of productivity. Nobody really understood how to quantify financial stress, and let alone physical stress, or how financial stress informed physical stress and played in, and come up with ideas or plans to cope with or manage. So this company that we're now engaged in, which is in wellness, is really I would call it a new age answer to both the Affordable Care Act. The Affordable Care Act is a piece of legislation that has forced a conversation and created an industry in wellness that really didn't exist in any formal way in the earlier years. It didn't have to, but now it does. And we've come up with an innovative way to deliver what I would say financially compelling savings to companies, because return on investment has always been a challenge, and we've figured out how to quantify return on investment, to go into the C-suite, talk to the CFO, talk to the CEO, and say, here is how you can quantify return on investment.
I wanted to talk to you about that. I actually, and just sorry to interrupt, but it's interesting. You said back then it wasn't ready or whatever yet, but I may have told you this. Alamo was a client of mine, 89, 90, and they named one of their HR people the director of wellness, and people thought that was artsy fartsy, ridiculous type of thing. They have a medical plan. They got a job. Be happy, right?
Right.
Different mindset now, and I think you're right. If you bring the tangible, immediate ROI, then that just is the not even the icing on the cake. It's like major icing on the cake to go along with the other benefits from a wellness program, right?
Sure. So having financially compelling savings, being able to quantify that, but at the same time, show and be able to demonstrate how we're going to reduce down healthcare spend and improve productivity and improve efficiencies are all very critical pieces of what we're building. So it's a little bit different in terms of how we've structured it. It's not just a wellness plan. In itself, it's a wellness plan wrapped in a unique structure. So getting the call it the HR community to really understand how to best take advantage of what we've built. The financial folks get it pretty quick, and that's the easy part. But then understanding how to integrate that into an organization and build it into a culture is really been the fun part.
Sure.
And we're getting better at that. But as we get better, we're growing rather rapidly.
Yeah, the interesting thing there is it's an industry that's, whether healthcare, wellness, whatever you want to call it, benefits, it's crowded. It's like a lot of people call themselves coaches. A lot of people call themselves wellness experts. A lot of people call themselves a lot of things. Doesn't mean they are. And it's often complicated. And sometimes, people don't want to talk about insurance, so-called, and all that because it's boring, it's complicated or whatnot. Talk a little bit about how you are engaging with clients on wellness. What is the differentiation? You've mentioned some of it already. One of the most important points, the immediate ROI. But how are you engaging with clients, from HR to CFO, so that they don't look upon it as, or they see that it's not complex? It is helping their business.
Sure. Well, I think that when the C-suite will get behind the concept of wellness and what I call pre-engage their population with communication. We have been successful in signing up 8, 9 out of 10 people that we see. So that's quite remarkable when industry standards are 10, 15, 20, maybe 30%. If you're great, you're at 30%. So part of it is what happens at the enrollment setting. The other part is it has to do with the coaching. As part of our structure, every participant gets assigned a health coach and has a specific plan designed and tailored for them. So, and our engagement with our health coach is extremely high, beyond what we originally expected. So in Q1, if we roll out in the first quarter, we're actually seeing that over 50% of participants are engaging with their health coaches. By Q4, we have well over 70% of participants engaging with their health coaches. So something magical is happening between the health coach and the participant themselves. So that's just call out on the engagement side. But when you engaged at that level, there are a lot of other things that start to happen. People are more productive, they're healthier. We're gathering data that is critical data that companies weren't seeing before. And as a part of gathering that data, we're able to then design, go in and redesign, if you will, an existing health plan. And while we don't have to disturb or disrupt anything that's there, what we end up doing is enhancing and revaluing an existing health plan because of the data and the information that we're getting that was not originally available, just because most people aren't engaged in wellness activities. At 20 or 30%, you're not capturing enough data to really to make a difference. Mm-hmm. And with respect to ROI, what we understood is that if we could find an insurance product that could be purchased under revenue code sections that allowed pre-tax deductions, then we could deliver immediate ROI. So we could go to the CFO and say, look, it looks kind of like a 401k plan in that it's a pre-tax reduction under what they call Section 125. Mm-hmm. So you reduce down your pay, you're going to save in payroll taxes, and in some states, depending on what state you're in, that reduced reportable payroll may also save in workers' comp premium as well. So there are two upfront ROIs that happen in year one, which is payroll tax and workers' comp premium. So you can make a case that the company's really not taking a risk by sponsoring wellness. In fact, they're improving their cash flow from day one, right, through this reduction in payroll and workers' comp, and then they're going to be able to deliver benefits to their employees that they're not necessarily getting access to. The other part of it is the employee themselves, by having a lower reportable salary, if you will, are paying less in income tax. So it's almost like saying you're giving a raise to your people. On average, it's turning out to be about $1,200 to $1,500 a year in average to the workforce, which for most people, that's a real number. And that pre-tax saving is now allowing them to buy benefits that they wouldn't otherwise be purchasing. So they're worksite benefits, they're voluntary benefits that sure, that are being purchased on some level, to some degree, but not to the same penetration that we're having, because fundamentally we're delivering the ability to purchase through creating pre-tax dollars.
Yeah, I find one of the exciting things I find about it is number one, the CFO will like it because there's immediate ROI. You need a wellness program, especially to attract good young people to companies these days. They're critical. Everybody always wanted to know what the benefits were, but younger people are demanding to have something like a wellness program, not just a medical plan, but a wellness program. And that doesn't mean just putting a gym in and telling people to go to it either, which used to be a wellness program, actually. So I think that some of those are some of the key aspects. And I mean, the future looks good with respect to something like this, doesn't it?
Yeah, we've had some in management say to us, you're really, in addition to ROI, that's nice, in addition to the engagement, what you're really doing is helping us differentiate from a recruit, retain, reward perspective.
Absolutely.
Being in the talent business, and for myself, being responsible for human capital, that's important. And in some industries, it's certainly more critical than perhaps others. But in some industries, being able to differentiate yourself from a benefit perspective is important. But also being able to de-risk your workforce with respect to financial well-being is an important piece. We're hearing that more and more, that most families, if the breadwinner for some reason was incapacitated or, God mm-hmm. forbid, we call it pre-retirement, there's a pre-retirement death, then most families don't have the financial wherewithal to withstand that unexpected event. So being able to deliver a holistic platform that can assure financial stability in the event that something happens untoward, I think we're also seeing that is not only a differentiator from a recruit, retain, reward standpoint, but it's also a differentiator in terms of the overall well-being of a workforce. And that's on a personal level, I would say to you, Mark, that's very exciting.
Well, that kind of leads me to one of my last points here on this part of the video is, your why. I love that expression, your why, and that's kind of part of your why, isn't it?
Yep, I'd say so. I would say that at this age and stage, for me, knowing that we're at a moment in time where America needs to be competitive in a global marketplace, and so we need a workforce that is healthy and that is robust and that can show up and perform at an optimal level. And it's not inconsequential. Deloitte recently published a study that quantified lost productivity. So for GAAP accounting purposes, we could never, in my day, back in the 80s and 90s, we couldn't really associate a number with lost productivity. But in this recent Deloitte study, they estimated that lost productivity is about 2.4 times the healthcare spend.
Yeah, not a surprise.
Right. So you think for most companies, and certainly in larger organizations, huge. I mean, if you believe it, that's a big number.
It's a huge number, and it doesn't help morale. And there's so much on top of that adds to the cost. Even that's not even in that number. No, it's great stuff. Couple of personal questions. These are kind of like 1 to 2 word answers.
Okay.
Do you have a pet?
It's not a Doberman. It's a golden retriever that does not have enough brains to get a headache.
Well, that's a good one. I got to remember that one. Do you have a favorite activity or sport?
I like to fly airplanes. I like to ski. Cool. I'm a squash and racquetball player.
Oh, I didn't know you played squash. I used to play squash. I missed it. I'll have to get back into it and play with you.
Anytime you're ready.
Cool. Do you have a favorite movie or TV show?
I guess somebody told me my favorite movie probably was Top Gun, and being an aviator, I'd go with that.
It's a good choice. It's a good choice.
As a favorite movie.
How about, do you have a favorite book by any chance?
I'm reading Abraham Joshua Heschel right now. Wow. He's right now become one of my favorite authors, and I'm working through a series of books that he's read. He's poetic in his writing. He's a deep thinker. It's real good information. So I'm really enjoying Heschel right now.
That's great. That's a differentiator right there. Nice job. How about music and food?
So classic rock, country, and classical music. My father was a big listener of classical music, so I developed an ear and an appreciation for classical music at a young age. And so, depending on my mood, on a Sunday you could hear classical music in the background with some white wine, while I'm doing whatever I do around the house.
Right.
But wine, I enjoy wine, single malt scotches.
And a cigar or not?
And on occasion.
Hey, listen, thanks for participating. This is great. Appreciate it.
Very good. Thanks for having me, Mark.